Welcome back to 5 Agendas. With this video, we cover the May 1st, which was just recently sent out earlier this week, and it catches us up with the videos on the Elohim Declaration. This will be part 6. The Elohim Declaration, we're going to be studying the higher purpose. The higher purpose of what? Okay. Revelation 16:17. It is done. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the seal of God. The sanctuary of Hebrews 8 is now to be presented as the true house of God. The sealing time of Revelation 7, and not the corporate structures known as the churches. The true house of God involves the reconciliation of the heavens and the earth, and then the final cleansing at the altar and the court. So the higher purpose, the Elohim Declaration, which said, it is done. Now that may be familiar to you. And as we go forward with this, you're going to see there was a, it is finished, and then you're going to see a, it is done. Here's the question. Does the final atonement, ministration of our great high priest after the order of Melchisedec, for the individual in the court occur just prior to Revelation 16 and the 7 last plagues? Or is it synchronized at the same time, the 7 trumpets and the seventh trumpet and the 7 angels with the 7 last plagues who empty their bowls? The latter makes sense, since the battle of the great day of God and the time of trouble with the 3 unclean spirits. But it is important to note that a great voice comes out of the temple at the time of the 7th angel, saying, it is done. Since the expression, it is done, or it is finished, serves a higher purpose than the destruction, and the context of the matter is in relation to Revelation 16:15. So here's the higher purpose. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. So then comes the destruction, but is the it is done, is its higher purpose relating to verse 15? Watching, keeping your garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Because then there's Armageddon, in 16. And verse 17, and the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, it is done. It is done, the Elohim's declaration. There are 2 key statements that relate to the completion of the higher purposes of God, of a testimony to the universe and sinful flesh. Okay? So think of it this way. So here's the 2. It is finished, said by Jesus when he was on the cross in John 19:30. And here in Revelation, it is done by a great voice out of heaven at the time of the 7th angel. Now with point 1 in John 19:30, the evangelical Protestant will say, it is finished means the final atonement was completed at the cross of Calvary. Okay? When in reality, the higher purpose of John 19:30 meant that what was finished was, so what did he finish? Anybody remember? Sacrifices, feasts, sanctuary service. He condemned sin and the sinful flesh. Okay? So what was finished was the duration of Christ's life and likeness, in the likeness of sinful flesh, and then he was the perfect sacrifice. The cross completed his life, overcoming in sinful flesh. The righteousness of the law can be fulfilled in us. It is finished, the perfect sacrifice. But Hebrews 6:19-20 reveals the second immutable. the commencement of his ministry as great high priest, since he too was touched with our infirmities. So I'm going to pull up this little two immutable little tract here that we have, that we published and printed years ago. Because in Hebrews 6, there's two immutable things. Okay, and we've done the videos on this earlier, which if you look down the line in the videos, you'll see the videos that we did on the two immutable things going more in depth into this, but just briefly, on the cross right here, he said, "It is finished." The necessity that this man have someone also to offer. Okay? And in Revelation, a voice says, "It is finished." So you have a "it is finished" for the first immutable thing, the offering of necessity, right? The oath, the decree. And then you have an "it is finished" for the second immutable, the necessary cleansing of heavenly things, and also a people. Okay? So you have two ministrations, you have two immutable things, and when each of those are done, it's not left, to mere, guesswork or speculation. There is a revelation that tells you it is finished. The first, an atonement of forgiveness at the cross, 31 AD, right here, it is finished. And the second, necessary cleansing, it is finished. It is done. Same thing, okay? Both culmination statements of John 19:30 and Revelation 16:17 are unique because the higher purpose of "it is finished," in fact, relates closely to the confirmation of the Elohim Declaration. It is done. You see that? It is finished. It is done for both of the two immutable things. In the saints' mouths, at the time of the 1290 days of Matthew 24:15, God said in their mouths was no guile. And God said they proclaim the perfect testimony. And yet, when they do that, it's in sinful flesh, and they overcome the dragon by the word of their testimony and love not their lives unto death. And this is, in fact, the perfect testimony, perfect witness of those without guile who are in sinful flesh. Therefore, Revelation 12:11, they overcome it by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, is true to its higher purpose. This is an extremely logical conclusion from the final atonement perspective, which means demonstration of the testimony of the two Elohim before the universe, even in sinful flesh. Overcoming the dragon with the perfect testimony is what is the higher purpose of the first angel's message. And the three angels' warning is all about. Summary. Revelation 16:17. The statement, "it is done," occurs deep into the time frame and during the days of the 1335 days. That's from Daniel 12:12. So "it is done" is the blessing. Remember, Daniel 12:12 says, "Blessed is he that cometh to the 1335." So the "it is done" is the blessing to they who wait, as said Daniel, and this equals the last act of the final atonement when mortals put on immortality. So at the cross, it is finished. First immutable thing, a necessary offering of necessity. First immutable, first atonement. Second immutable, second atonement, which is the final atonement. It is finished. Voice comes from heaven, just like it came from the cross. In both instances, for both key statements, for both of the two immutable things, for both ministrations, we have a "it is finished, it is done." telling us when it is. Okay. And the blessing to those who come to the 1335, and then it said, it is done. Final atonement. The seal of God equals the seal of his protection from weather and demonic calamities, which is the time of the 6 trumpets. So the seal of God, remember, is in Revelation 7. The seal of God is also a settling into the truth, Ephesians 5:9, especially with the eternal righteousness of Christ. Revelation 13:8, from the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. And this eternal righteousness forms the bulwark of the testimony of he who made, which is the testimony of Jesus. This seal is to be real, because the reader will recall at the time of Revelation 9, in the first woe, that those who are sealed are not to be hurt during the 5 months of torment. So therefore, the seal must take place before the first woe, the 5 months of torment, which is the 5th trumpet. And this seal is protection from the beast and locust who blasts out of the bottomless pit. It should be noted this protection originates only from the basis of Revelation 7. And the sealing had occurred just prior to the first woe. So remember, there's woe, woe, woe. So first, second, third woe. So the sealing occurred just prior to the first woe. God said those locusts could not hurt those who were sealed. And what you'll find interesting in Ezekiel 9:4, man in linen marks a mark of those who are sighing and crying for the abominations to be done in the midst thereof. In Revelation 9:4, the same chapter, same verse. So Ezekiel 9:4, Revelation 9:4. Okay, let's read it. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass, neither any grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So Ezekiel 9:4, mark with a mark those who are sighing and crying. Revelation 9:4, only hurt those that don't have the seal of God in their foreheads. Now, what you'll find interesting here in Ezekiel 9:4, the Lord said unto him, this is the man clothed with linen, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark a towel upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And so here I have in my Bible, okay, you have the modern Hebrew, okay, here, but below you have the Hebrew letter Tav at the time of Ezekiel. That's the Paleo Hebrew. There's your mark a towel. And you'll notice what it looks like. Okay. Now the final ministration of a high priest is intended to occur, and God has provided us with a setting and the relevant scenario if we have eyes to see, and this is seen in Revelation 15:8, where no man is in the heavenly temple. Okay, final ministration. No man. Because you'll notice in the type in Revelation 16 that no man, the high priest, was able to go in. Okay. And it is at that time, Revelation 15, the 7 angels with the 7 last plagues go forth, time of the 3rd woe. The cleansing by the man in linen for the last ministration of the great high priest on the day of its antitypical fulfillment in the heavenly, 15:8, no man could enter, which was defined in the type by Leviticus 16, see? Verses 18 to 19. Have a look. Then comes the placement of sins on Azazel, the scapegoat. Therefore, it can be concluded the cleansing of the final atonement occurs at Revelation 16:17. Now you don't have to wonder or guess. The cleansing of the final atonement occurs at Revelation 16:17. It is done. Here's the thing. Going out at midnight to meet the bridegroom is at that brazen altar in the court, which was where the ministration for the individual was. Equals the court, and this is a process into the sealing time of Revelation 7, and results in those who are declared righteous or holy. The Elohim Declaration. He that is righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is holy, let him be holy still. 2 couplets are sealed in truth. But this sealing is special since they receive a mark, markatau, from the man in linen with the writer's inkhorn, and for the dragon is at war. Remember in Revelation 12:17, he goes to make war with the remnant, and is the beast of Revelation 13:7, and it has its own mark, and that's the mark you don't want. So how much more important it is to know the Lamb slain, understand what this eternal righteousness and this Elohim Declaration is saying. He that is righteous, he that is holy. But the point is, the time of the first beast, 1260 days, the scriptures are not saying, even at that time, even though they have the seal of God, the saints are still not cleansed in the final atonement, because the final atonement has not been finished. It has not been said, that voice from heaven. It is done, okay, during those 1260 days at that time of the first beast. But they have the seal of God first, Revelation 7. And then comes your woes, trumpets. And then deep into the 1335. It is done. Final atonement. Okay. Actually, unto those who are sealed, which is Ezekiel 9, it's a marking or a sealing and a process of sanctifying, of coming out of the territory of the fallen daughters, and then into the purposes of the eternal righteousness of Christ by faith and the truth of imputed righteousness in all its eternal forms. But again, it is repeated, the sealing is not the cleansing of the final atonement. And I would encourage you to, you can pause this video at any time and read the parts that aren't highlighted and that we won't be covering in the video. This is just, we're going to be covering the highlights of the thought paper in these videos as we continue to go forward. But the links are below. Download it and have a look. Is there anything else more important? Okay, so here we turn to Philippians 3, where Paul says in verse 9, and be found in him, not having mine own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. Did the reader notice the emphasis Paul placed on imputed righteousness? That which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God through faith. That's imputed righteousness, not his, not having mine own righteousness, but the imputed righteousness, the eternal righteousness of Christ, his eternal identity, which means you're not denigrating his eternal deity, identity, divinity, dignity, by saying he was birthed or brought forth or literally begotten at some point or in eternity. The eternal righteousness of Christ, the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, which is of God by faith. The same imputed righteousness imputed to Abraham, it is the same imputed righteousness of all those who the Elohim declare are righteous still. and the He who is holy still. Don't miss that. The uniqueness of these statements from Paul is entirely about the eternal righteousness of He who made, and he knew it was not a theory. Paul could have been translated if he so chose, and there then was no final atonement involved. But he chose to stay. Paul validates the true and the only genuine imputed righteousness, which is from the two eternal divines, and that imputed righteousness which is from the two eternal divines, and that imputed righteousness is the divine premise of the first angel, of why God warns to worship He who made. Has the reader forgotten? Remember Revelation 12:17? War, it's war, and no less than the eighth king and the first beast, the lamb-like beast and the red dragon, who hold sternly to their objective to make war with the saints. So they make war on the saints, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. The blood of the Lamb that was shed on Calvary, your first immutable, the offering of necessity. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. What does their testimony consist of? Christ's eternal righteousness imputed to them, which is what the second immutable thing is all about, a necessary cleansing. It's just that simple. They make war with the saints, which is unto their theological and literal destruction and death, with no hope of salvation. Their goal is to obliterate the majesty and the powerful dictum of the eternal righteousness of He who made. Have we really allowed the scriptures to speak? We haven't. But that doesn't have to remain so anymore. Now we're going to read through this last part, and I'm going to pull up a chart. Okay? Because the fact that Jesus referred to Daniel when he was speaking, recorded in Matthew 24:15, Jesus referred to Daniel, knowing full well there was going to be an application of the abomination of desolation against the daily, the Hadamid, from 554 to 1844, which is this right here. He knew full well that this was going to take place between 554 and 1844. There's your 1290. There's your abomination of desolation. That's what Daniel 12 is talking about. Okay? There in 12:11 and Daniel 8:13. That's what the prophecy is referring you to. Jesus, when he was back here at this point, he took a prophecy referring to this right here, and he used it as a sign for these living right here during this time. Okay? For the coming destruction, surrounding of Jerusalem by the armies in 66 AD and the destruction in 70 AD. But because it was in his discourse as signs for the end time, he used this prophecy, used as a sign for them living here, and used as a sign for us living down at this time, which is yet future. Okay? So when he referred to Daniel, that prophecy concerning this coming 554 to 1844 abomination of desolation, transgression of desolation against the daily for 1290 years, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. It's important to notice in his signs of the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the end times, he fully endorses and validates another or apotelismatic application of the same prophecy regarding a literal 1290 days right here. I saw one of his heads wounded to death, deadly wound was healed, and then 1290 days, 40 and 2 months, a coming literal 1290 days of the AOD against the man in linen, and the same daily, same prince of the host, the same daily man in linen, and the same daily again. Yes, it relates to the last ministration of the final atonement and the attack of the first beast, right there. Revelation 13. Also, the importance to finally solve the controversy over the daily, which has now been done, resolves a lot of the stumbling blocks of the sanctuary doctrine. So when the abomination of desolation takes place against the daily, just like it did during the 1290 from 554 to 1844, when it takes place again, you will not miss it, and you can assist others. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So did our viewers happen to notice, by Jesus using this prophecy in Daniel, referring to this right here, 554 to 1844, 1290, and by using that abomination of desolation that applied to that to apply to the destruction of Jerusalem, he revealed the type right there. There's your type. Then, as a sign for the last days, we have a dual apotalismatic antitype right here and right here. See, antitypical. There's your type. Jesus used this prophecy referring to this. He used it as a type for a sign for this, and an antitype here, and a future, because it was a sign for us, signs of the end times, which wasn't back here. Okay, here we have a dual apotalismatic, or more than one application of the same prophecy, antitype of the 1290 days, which equals Daniel 8, 13 and 14, which is your 554 to 1844 prophetic years. Jesus, looking into the future, said to understand Daniel 12 at the time of the end, because here's your another application of the same prophecy. The dual apotalismatic of the abomination of desolation will be literal 1260, 1290 days, commencing from an event relating to the seventh king, which says, I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, because Revelation 17 says that this seventh only lasts for a short period of time. And then 1260, 42 months. Okay? And this has to be future, because the Bible says that the head was wounded and then healed, and then 42 months. This is the chronology that the Bible gives, not the 1260 or verse 5 coming before verse 3 with the 1260, okay, ending in 1798, and then the deadly wound. Doesn't happen, can't happen, doesn't fit, makes no sense. It was an error. We don't have to remain with that error. We can accept the man in linen and what his testimony is telling us. Matthew 24:15, whoso readeth, let him understand. So it's relating to the seventh king of Revelation 17, the destruction of the little horn, the scarlet queen, in Revelation 17, 16 to 18 by the 10 kings. And then the particular event of Revelation 13 arrives in that strict order. The seventh king, the destruction, and then there's a healing, and then 1260. So it was Jesus who said, have an ear, then listen up. Why? Because the last of those 30 days, from the time of the ending of the 1260, for the 30 days, additional 30 days of the abomination unto 1290 commences. Revelation 13, 11 to 18, the entrance of the second beast. Wow. Okay, so you're going to see that first beast. Okay, you're going to see this seventh receives a deadly wound. It's healing. Here comes this eighth. 1260. 30 additional days, literal days, into the 1290. Second beast, mark of the beast. This is why it's important to be able to understand what's going to happen. So by applying Daniel 12, 7 to 11, the apotalismatic correctly, the plus 45 days. So after the 1290, there's the 45 additional days to the 1335. Blessed is he that cometh. To the 1335, there's a blessing. It is done. Second immutable, final atonement, administration, complete, altering the court. That becomes a matter of fact. Jesus confirmed it's in Daniel 12 and Revelation 13, where he is revealed as the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. So there you have it. Hope this helps. This is part 6. So stay tuned for part 7 and 8 and so on. God bless. Till next time.